The Committee of the Whole is now called to order. Can I just remind the body that if you are offering up an amendment, please have that written out. It'll save the clerks a lot of time in hunting the author of the amendment down for signature. So if you're offering up an amendment, please have that written. Okay? Thank you. When we last left off, there was a motion to jump over and go to the judiciary. That being said, we have the Chief Justice here as well as his management team. So with that, Senator Espadon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for being here on a Saturday. But I think everybody here understands and recognizes the emergency of the situation because of the government-wide financial crisis we're in. In the present bill that the governor has submitted before this body, one of the sections is Chapter 4, Section 17, which proposes to reduce the budget of the judiciary branch by, I believe, a little over $500,000. What I would like to know, there would be several lines of questions I'd like to pursue, but I guess, Your Honor, excuse me, I guess I should recognize you. Thank you for being here, Chief Justice Carplito, as well as Justice Torres, and the rest of the staff and management from the court. I'm sure you've seen this bill, and Your Honor, if I may, and I'll direct this question to you. There's about $504,000 that's being proposed to be cut from your budget. If you could, sir, just please, I guess the first question would be is, in your opinion, would this affect your operations at the judiciary? And how so, sir?
Yes, thank you, Senator Espaldon. And if I may be permitted, I will address and answer that question directly, but I'd like to first just state some observations that we would like to make for the record in terms of what we face today. First of all, we take very seriously, just as you all do, the dire financial condition of the government of Guam and the proposed cuts that are being made for the judiciary. Before I go into that, I would like to introduce the members of our division heads that are here today, and you've recognized Justice Torres. We also have for the record, our administrator of the courts, Mr. Perry Taitano, our chief marshal, Mr. Frank Leon Guerrero, our controller, Mr. Tony Meno, our director of communications, policy, and he has a long title, Mr. Dan Tidinko, our deputy director, Mr. Robert Cruz, our client services administrator, Virginia Yasuhiro, our court programs director, Jackie Zanin Cruz, our clerk of court for the Superior Court of Guam, Richard Martinez, our procurement and facilities administrator, Mr. Ray Timingla, our MIS administrator, acting, Mr. Robert Gaminde, our juvenile probation unit supervisor, Mr. Rudy Gaza, our human resources director, Barbara Jean Paris, our staff attorney for the Superior Court, Mr. Bruce Bradley, and our staff attorney, Ms. Jerry Cepeda. I would like to thank the members of the legislature for giving us this opportunity to express our views regarding the governor's proposal to cut our fiscal year 2007 budget. At the outset, I would like to state that we were never consulted as to whether or not this proposed cut would undermine our operations or how it would affect our operations. We are not oblivious to the government's financial difficulty, and we are willing to share in the sacrifices that we must make as a government. However, we feel that the judiciary is at the very core of public safety, and we should be treated accordingly. In terms of prioritizing health, safety, and education, I think we need to recognize that without the judiciary, the public safety cannot be ensured and protected. You can't just rely on our police officers to arrest the criminals and think that without a functioning judiciary that you can continue to hold these criminals behind bars. It just doesn't work that way. You can probably do for a reasonable period of time, but after that their rights kick in, and there needs to be a certain due process to continue holding them. It is my understanding that we are being asked to incur a cut of 5% to our budget, and this is where Senator Espaldon has assigned a figure of a little over $500,000. And then at the same time, it is my further understanding that the administration is requesting an increase in their executive branch budget. We do not feel that this is fair and equal treatment. As the administrator of the court pointed out in an earlier letter to Senator Calvo, we are already absolving an approximately $900,000 cut from the outset of our budget. From our initial requests, we were cut $700,000 in our current FY 2007 budget, and an additional $200,000 when the retirement fund increased its government contribution rate, and that was never funded to us in the current budget. In addition, we have effectively been cut by another $2.5 million to date by allotments not being released to us as per the budget that was earlier passed by the legislature. And so if you add these figures up, to date we have already been cut $3.4 million. If you're requesting us to absorb another $500,000, and at the same time there is a proposed increase on the part of the executive branch, then there's just no fair and equal treatment. And so we are opposed to this further cut of 5%, and we request that the legislature take into account what I've stated in its deliberation. Now, in direct answer to Senator Espaldon's question as to what cuts will that translate to within the operational budget of the court, we have not sat down to actually prioritize how further we're going to absorb that. But with all these additional cuts, it's probably going to have to affect personnel and probably our drug courts. We will have to take a look at that. And but this is something that we just need to sit down as a body within our branch and just to prioritize. But this is not just in a vacuum that it's only $500,000. Thank you,
Senator Espaldon.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Justice. If you may, sir, I think that we need to have a common understanding amongst us here in the body, as well as anybody who may be viewing these proceedings, as to the role that the judiciary plays in our form of government. If you could just perhaps give us a brief overview of that, or some little bit of insight into that, just to bring it down to the very basics so that we all understand what the broader picture is in this.
Well, I'd be very happy to do that and to conduct our civic class today, but I can already see the speaker rolling his eyes. But in all seriousness, I don't think that we can ensure public safety. We just the court is an integral part of ensuring the safety of our public, because you just can't keep criminals behind bars without bringing them to the courts to determine whether or not their rights are being protected. It's just not going to happen. They'll just have to be released. You can do it for a reasonable period of time, but you can't do it for an extended period of time. And if we're looking at affecting the hours of operation of the courts, it will affect the traffic court. It will affect the small claims court. It will affect the civil cases. It will affect the domestic cases. And there's going to be a substantial hardship to our community should that happen.
Thank you, Your Honor. What I was actually trying to get to is, again, the basic Civics 101 course, in terms of we have the three branches of government, as I understand it, as our government exists today. We do have the executive branch, comprised of the the governor and his side. We do have the legislative branch, and I believe the third branch, and I know the third branch, is the judicial branch. We all have a certain role we play. So, in essence, in the broader picture, I guess the message that I just wanted to get across is that you are a co-equal branch of government, as with the legislature and the executive branch. Is that not correct?
That is correct, and that's why we are requesting for some parity and equal treatment. If one branch of government is requesting for an increase of their budget, and we all have to sacrifice, well, I just wanted to point out that I don't think that the judiciary should be treated as a government agency and just unilaterally cut, number one, without consultation, number two, and if it's not going to apply to the other branches of government. I just don't understand. And if you need to prioritize, we're part of public safety, and it's my understanding that this body sees it as a priority to protect health, education, and safety.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may, going back to, you mentioned earlier that over the past several years, some cuts have been made to your budget. I believe it was to the tune, you mentioned about $2 million, $2.5 million?
Well, at the outset, we were cut from our requested budget approximately $700,000, and we absorbed that. And in addition, the retirement fund increased contribution resulted in an additional $200,000 liability to us that was never funded as part of our original budget. So that's a $900,000 cut of our approved appropriation.
And then you mentioned earlier that, or at least in your letter, you did reference a letter that you wrote to the chairman, and you state in the letter in the year 2005, your budget was cut by nearly $170,000. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct. We were just trying to trace it for the last 3 years, that while our mandate has really increased in terms of what is expected of the courts, for the last 3 years our budget has been decreased. And it's not only that we're not even holding status quo budget, it's been decreasing for the last 3 years.
If I may, Your Honor, in fiscal 2006, your letter also states that your budget was also cut by another $928,000. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
And then this year, of course, we're looking at a 704 cut in the budget, plus this $500,000 cut in your budget, so that comes about to a $1.2 million.
Plus the 2.5 allotments that have not been released to us, that is effectively
so in the
a cut
neighborhood
for us.
about $1.4.5 million, basically, is what you're going to have to
No, it's
endure.
about 3.4 million.
Well, I mean, yes, if we add in the prior years as well.
No, just for this current
just for this
fiscal
current
year.
year.
Just this current fiscal year, allotments, they are behind in their allotment releases, $2.5 million to us. And in addition, there's the $200,000 that we have to absorb from the shortfall for the retirement fund contribution. And then initially we received a cut of $700,000 for this fiscal year. And then they're asking us to absorb another $500,000, and at the same time proposing that they increase their budget. I just don't feel that that's treating us in an equal and fair way.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you may, if you will, sir, please, over the past several years, again, we've just kind of identified that the court has had to suffer budget cuts and also is not getting their full allocation of funds. How has that hampered the court's operation?
Well, to the credit of all the people around here, we have done the best we can, and we continue to deliver the service. We have just been forced to live within our means. If Perry can identify all the various cost-cutting measures that he has undertaken, we can even put it in writing to you and assign numbers to it. But they have done an admirable job in not filling vacancies, in just reviewing our entire contractual obligations. Mr. Timinglo has done a great job in saving us and going out and completely redoing our copying machines and saved us thousands of dollars. And Jackie Zanin has been very aggressive in pursuing federal funds, and she's done a great job in increasing the amount of federal funds that we are receiving. So we've just not sat back and relied on what has been appropriated to us. We've taken the steps to cut, not fill, and to pursue other source of funds.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, I would like to make a motion, and I realize at the beginning of the proceedings you did inform us. This is the first news to me, and excuse me for being a freshman senator and not being aware of the rules, but you did say that any motions that were to be made on the floor should be in writing.
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion, but before I make that motion, I would ask for a recess.
If it's a motion to delete,
It's a motion to delete, yes. I would like to move that we delete Section 17 of Chapter 4 of this bill.
okay. On the motion, Speaker Forbes.
First off, I want to congratulate you on bringing so many people out on a Saturday afternoon. There's more of you than there are us. It's pretty amazing. First off, part of your presentation is it's not fair that, we're kind of in the same boat you are, okay? We're taking a hit to, not a very large hit, but we're taking a hit in the governor's proposal, and like you, we've been suffering from pretty delayed allotment. Well, we don't really, you and I don't really have allotments. It's cash, really, for us. The legislature and the Superior Court, it's more of a cash issue than an allotment issue, because I don't think that BBMR actually assigns you allotments, do they?
Yes.
They do? You're still under BBMR allotment control?
Well, under the budget bill, we're not, but under the actual fiscal release of the funds, we are.
I think what they do is they automatically give you 100% allotment at the beginning of the year, and then poor Lou becomes the gatekeeper, not BBMR. I think that's how it works in practice. So, but we're kind of in the same boat. You're about 10% of your budget down, right, in terms of cash?
Yes.
Yeah, we're about, 20%.
But that's only half of the fiscal year.
No, I understand. If it keeps going this way, we'll be 40%, you'll be 20%. So I'm very sympathetic to the situation you're having as far as cash goes. We've had a couple of paydays pop around here not too long ago where literally we didn't get a check within an hour. I was going to just freeze payroll for that period. But part of your presentation is also that you don't think it fair that you take this $500,000 cut, and yet the executive budget seems to not be taking the same cut. In fact, hypothetically, theoretically, it might. Well, we just don't know because it's kind of lumped right now in the proposal. Would your sense of justice be satisfied if a similar cut were extracted?
From the executive branch?
Well, like from the governor's office specifically?
What
I'm just trying to get the point.
And I understand the question, and I don't want us to appear arrogant and that we should be exempted no matter what. We're not saying that at all.
Mm-hmm.
We recognize the difficulty that the government is in, and we're willing to do our fair share. I took the time to point out to you that it's not in a vacuum that the 500,000 is all that it is.
And I guess what I was trying to say to you is I share your pain. It's not in a vacuum here either. In fact, it's not in a vacuum in a lot of places, not in a vacuum at UOG, GCC, or other places. And I'm not minimizing the effect, Phil, on what you guys are saying. It's just that I want to know, I kind of want to know, is your sense of justice better served by restoring the cut, by ensuring parity of cuts? What is it really that...
If it has to be in order to achieve solvency and pay our employees and pay our vendors, that there be a X percentage across the board, then we will accept that and we will try and make it work.
I understand.
However, if it's just for the purpose of, because we're incurring 5%, you should cut them 5%, I would like to think that the legislature who's identified the priorities of government, that we come within the public safety and that you then determine the fiscal policy.
Okay,
that is
I follow.
to us.
You had there was a brief discussion about three branches of government, and I don't want to get civics Well, this wouldn't be Civics 101. This would actually be probably Civics 301. I don't want to get too deep in this, but especially when you're looking at the Constitution as opposed to the Organic Act. And I ain't no lawyer. A lot of lawyers up there, and I'm not one of them. But it is implicit, if not explicit, I think, in the Constitution that no branch is permitted by act or by default to essentially extinguish the activity of a co-equal branch, is it? In short, this legislature appropriates funds. If for whatever reason this legislature were to be seized with mass insanity come September and decided we're appropriating zero to the operations of the court, that would be unconstitutional, would it not? Because in effect the legislature would be preventing a co-equal branch of government from existing. You could not, Phil, to put the shoe on the other foot, determine by a decision of the Guam Supreme Court that the legislature should cease to exist and lose its power to make law.
Yeah, it would not be ethically appropriate for me to issue an opinion.
Could I ask somebody else then, maybe?
No, but I think a way to address your question is the legislature has the power of the purse string. If you determine that you are not going to fund the judiciary, then the consequences flow, and that is we close the court, criminals get released.
No, Phil, that's not where I'm going. See, you had a predecessor once upon a time. You never served with him, but as I look around the room, I know at least one guy who did, Perry. Your predecessor, a long time ago, he kind of spoke like this, if you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, Perry? Mm-hmm. And there was one legislature a long time ago, might have been the 13th to 12th, I have no idea what it was, but I was watching this session actually at the legislature, and they were dealing with the budget of at that time, the Superior Court. And he, the presiding judge at the time, the Honorable Paul J. Abadi, felt that the legislature was severely underfunding the Superior Court. And he came in, and it was a hearing just like this, but his testimony was very brief. And he sat there and he said, I think your budget is so low that it will essentially prevent judiciary from operating. And while you have the power of the purse strings, you do not have the power to prevent the judiciary from operating. And as a result, basically he was saying, now this was Paul J. Abadi, and when he spoke, people had a tendency to listen no matter what it was, because he did have that Tony Soprano way of coming across. But the bottom line was he was saying that there does arrive a point where the judiciary, because it is a co-equal branch of government, would have the authority to compel an appropriation. Now, I don't want to get too deep into this and have a convening of the Supreme Court of Guam, and this is not a trial. But it does occur to me in my non-lawyerly, non-scholarly way that it isn't possible for us to do that. Now, you're not saying that this is what you're going to do. I understand that. The amount of money we're talking about here is so small by comparison that it wouldn't compel that kind of action. But what flows from that, I think, is a principle. And what the principle is that although we tend to, as a form of government, base ourselves very strongly around words on pieces of paper that were either written in Philadelphia at the late part of the 1700s, or by documents that were passed in Washington, D.C. in 1948 and subsequently amended. We do have a system of government that in a sense flows from the British system, which has no similar pieces of paper. There is no such thing as a British Constitution. Instead, what you have is certain traditions that have emerged through the practice of democracy. You have traditions that have been honed not only in the halls of Parliament, but in the high courts of Great Britain, decisions that have been handed down. Indeed, the judiciary itself, in a weird way, operates that way by defining and smoothing out the rough edges of statute and the Constitution itself by defining things through the action of courts such as yours. One of the traditions that has kind of developed over the years is the tradition that that the separate and equal branches of government give leeway to their fellow equal branches of government to make determinations about what their priorities are, provided that people don't go whack, and that there is a certain degree of mutual respect that is accorded between the three branches. When you guys come before us for your annual budget, as you well know, Phil, you send Dan or Perry down here, and what we try and do is we try and arrive at some kind of consensus, so that what we don't have is a whole bunch of fighting on the floor, because it just isn't seemly, because we're talking about a co-equal branch of government. So we try and arrive at a reasonable consensus. We try not to be unilateral. I know there was a period of time there when the court itself was engaged in some internecine warfare, and we were getting dragged into it. But subsequent to that, we've tried not to do that kind of stuff, because there's a sense of mutual respect. And all I want to say is the more I think about it, that's a good way to operate. You know, it's a good way to operate, so that we never have these questions about, well, could the court compel us to give them a budget so they could exist? Which, personally, if I were betting, and again, I'm no lawyer and I'm not a judge, my bet is you could. Because how could we prevent you from existing? That seems to me to be inorganic and unconstitutional. We can debate whether or not you need new cars. We can debate whether or not you need X number of marshals or Y number of marshals. But you do have, different from a department, and this is what you said, Phil, don't treat us like a department. That's right, you're not. The Department of Youth Affairs does not have an intrinsic right to exist. The Department of Public Health is very important, but it is statutorily created entirely. There are some offices of the government of Guam, such as the Transition Office for GTA sale, which arguably not only don't have a right to exist, but scarcely have a reason to at this point. So you have a right to exist, as much as we have a right to exist, as much as the executive branch has a right to exist, as much as the entire government of Guam as an entity, not its constituent departments and agencies, as much as the concept of the government has a right to exist. And this is important to me as I ponder how I'm going to vote on this particular measure that my good colleague, Senator James
Can I
Espaldo.
just have one reaction to that? I will say that personally, in my thinking, that it would be very short-sighted for our branch of government to threaten the legislature that if you don't give us this money, that this is that we have the right to it. I think that would be very short-sighted. We'll just lay out the facts.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, so long as you have the power of the purse string, you can play the game better than we can.
You know, and I agree with you, Phil, and actually you're making my point. My point is, in order to prevent ever getting into that silliness, what is critical is that there be mutual respect. That's my point. My point is it never should come down to a power play or who's got the biggest muscles or who has the biggest stick. That our system works best when people have a sense of respect for each other and when the branches have a sense of respect for each other, which is why, you know, when you guys do come down, at least in my experience, what we try and do is we try, you know, come together in the spirit of Inafat Maulik instead of saying, well, it's our decision or it's your decision, because that's pointless. And I think democracy works best when people talk to each other and when people respect each other and when those traditions of respect are upheld. One of the reasons why you're so busy down there at the court nowadays is because there has been a breakdown throughout Guam in that simple concept of respeto that once upon a time used to moderate behavior far more better than police officers and laws. You know, once upon a time, if your mother looked at you the wrong way, your behavior changed. Once upon a time, if your dad said, get my belt, your behavior changed. Once upon a time, if your grandmother said, don't do that, you didn't. Your behavior changed because of respect. And I want to make sure we preserve that sense of mutual respect. And I just want you guys to know that I do respect the court, that I believe that you guys are very much an equal branch of this government of Guam, and that always will guide me in how I deal with the court. That's all, Phil. I'm not saying you're going to come down here like Paul Abadi and threaten us. I know you wouldn't. You're too cool. So don't worry about it.
Thank you, Speaker Forbes. Vice Speaker, on the motion to delete Section 17 of Chapter 4.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to see this very esteemed group in front of me. Again, especially in light of the seriousness of the discussions that we have here and the seriousness of the issue in regards to why the governor sent us this amended budget bill for fiscal year 2007 as a result of what the governor sees as not only a long-term financial predicament of the government of Guam, but also a short-term crisis. And that's why, again, the administration has presented this particular piece of legislation. Before I make my comments, I'm going to ask a question again. I came a little bit late. Earlier it was mentioned that from last year's appropriation, you were shorted, weren't you? Mm-hmm. How much? And what percentage of the total appropriation did you receive?
Last year we were short $928,000.
Okay, $1 million, which is about, what is that? 5%, right? This year, you are, I heard $2 million short as of halfway through the year. 2.5. So if they were to continue in the releasing of cash disbursements at the rate that they're being released to the judiciary, then in all probability you're looking at about 22-23% reduction in the actual, actually in terms of receipts of cash as what was originally appropriated for the fiscal year. And by the way, you're not unique in this. And the speaker mentioned, again, the rate in which the legislature is receiving cash. As we evidenced yesterday with University of Guam and GCC, the same issue. As a matter of fact, GCC was the luckier of the two, because GCC is only at this point 10% down. I think they're at 40% rather than what they should be at 50% by halfway through the fiscal year. As for University of Guam, they were, they are not as bad as the legislature in terms of priorities and passing of turning over cash, but they're somewhere between. They're somewhere between. Where are they? $7 million. So, in fact, the Professor Guthertz, help me recall how much if they were to move along in that direction. 27%. So again, obviously what is occurring is there is already an appropriation that has been adjusted by the administration as a result of actual cash flows into the government, as well as prioritization of where monies would go. And again, as we went through certain agencies a couple of weeks ago with BBMR, there was agencies that were getting anywhere from 80 to 100% of the release of allotment. There were other agencies that were 11 or 12% of their allotment. And of course, that doesn't make mention as to actually what kind of cash went as a result of that release of allotment. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is the question I posed to both the University of Guam and to GCC was that if there was to be the ratification of the down 2.5% reduction in their budget as proposed by the governor, would they be able to deal with that rather than what has been occurring with them, where they're getting anywhere from 50% of their current appropriation allotment or worse? And obviously, from both the standpoint of the university and GCC, if they could get 97.5% appropriation and actual cash behind it, they could be able to accommodate those reductions as long as they got the cash. what their concern has been is they've been granted appropriations by the legislature and ratified by law and by the signature of the governor, but they haven't been getting the cash. And of course, I'm going to ask you that same question. If we were to keep your appropriation now, as it, or actually, if we were to go along with the amendment that was offered by my junior senator, and you were to continue to have your full appropriation, but at the end of the fiscal year, you were to get a 25% discount in the appropriation, where you would only receive 75 to 80% of your budget based on actual cash. Obviously, it would be a hollow victory, don't you? Do you agree?
First of all, Senator, if the cuts were not to be made effective by law, number one, it would give us hope that we're still entitled to that by law. Number two, that if the governor shares the policy directive of the legislature and that health, education, and public safety have priority, that be taken, and the judiciary falls within the category of public safety, then the judiciary should have priority in the allocation of cash should there be a shortfall, and that it would be our position that it should be funded when you take those elements into account.
And then understood. And that is the reason for my comments. I do not want to see a hollow victory here. Obviously, I do have concerns because several weeks back, when officials from BBMR made their statements that there has been a release of a certain allotments and there was cash to back those release of allotments up, it's clearly evidence that there has been a release of allotment, but there is not the cash to back it up. And as we tread along carefully, and I see now the administration trying to attempt to reduce spending, and in fact, currently this bill is not reduce spending. This bill, if enacted into law as is, there are certain key components to it. One key component is that there will be a ratification for increased spending because we're at a $477 million spending authorization. Another thing is that there's going to be an increase in revenues as a result of increased taxation, which every one of us here is would have to contribute to that increase in tax. Also, there would be an increase in borrowing. And of course, the borrowing is not the revenue and expense side, it's the cash flow side. And with that borrowing of over $30 million, it would inject cash, but it would inject cash with consequences such as greater debt service, and of course, when the time comes for budgeting, lower appropriations or some modification in appropriations. I do want to make, actually, I think it's going to be happening from this portion on to the remainder of the expenditure portion of the budget, as every one of my colleagues comes here requesting for an amendment to increase or to delete the decrease in appropriation. I guess I'm going to have to be the smiling executioner, and I don't like that because I respect the judiciary. I don't particularly care that the administration, again, there is in the past when bills don't go where it cuts separate branches such as judiciary, such as legislature, but I understand that the situation the administration is in. But I also understand by the time we're through this thing, the three branches of government there won't be one that has to put a necessary burden over themselves. When we get to the administration, they will share in the burden, and the same as the legislature will share in the burden. And I hate to be of this tone to you folks, because you know me. If I could, again, we've worked with the Judicial Building Fund. I'm going to be looking at every which way to work with judiciary to strengthen you as we move forward in budgets. Yesterday, unfortunately, I stepped out of the room, and there was a motion on on getting the appropriation back for the Guam Public Library. It's unfortunate I was outside the room because I would have objected to that amendment. And it's not because I don't believe that education or the libraries are important. It's just that, in fact, they're so important that I'm the one that enacted a law that took a portion of passport fees to fund our libraries. The thing is, I've got to be consistent. And I must remember, I'm going to remind the members of this body, over the past week, when the governor presented us a bill, and in this bill called for an increase of taxation by 25%, every one of us in this body does not want to see this burden put on the people of Guam, because it just makes medicine, food, you name it, more expensive. When an amendment, so we eliminated the increase in gross receipts tax. And guess what? It cut $12 million off the revenues of this proposed budget. And then there was an amendment made, and it was an amendment that I also, I understood and I agreed with. I didn't object to it. And there was a concern that, of course, those folks that are owed a tax refund, there was a concern that they're not getting paid, and we know that. So why did the administration give us a provision for tax refunds less than the prior year? So being the conservative that I am, I thought it was a great amendment by the senator. No objection. We haven't gone into the borrowing portion yet, but we will get there. But when we get into the borrowing portion of the bill, this is where my main concerns are. If we take out a debt and we pay this or we pay that, come fiscal year 08, and if it is Section 30 money, then the $40 million that the administration has given me in this FY08 proposed budget, you subtract $30 million bucks, and we have an even bigger problem in fiscal year 2008. Maybe, just maybe, if we do pass this line of credit, and by some, and in fact, I'm glad judiciary is here, because assessed value, there could be a probability that that $30 million portion of the bill would be under the assessed value. So maybe it could pass. And if it passes, maybe we can stretch it out. But there's going to be debt service, and that debt service will be taken out of the appropriations for fiscal year 08. But as a result of the actions of this body over the past several days, we are at a dilemma. We are at a dilemma because we are now at an over $20 million imbalance. So whenever, and I'm going to ask the members of the body that we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers, as well as we have a responsibility to every agency to ensure they get their funds. Not just paper, but cash. So if we are to accept that we do not want tax increases, we want to accept that we want to get tax refunds for those that are owed tax refunds, and whatever changes that we make, well, we've already made changes in the revenue side, but for whatever changes that we make from here on forward, when we go through every page and every section, and there's a cut from the original appropriation, you must understand there's got to be a way to back that up. And again, it's unfortunate we had the public library get their, and I say unfortunate with pain in my heart, is because I'd rather have the Guam Public Library get a cut of 2.5% of their appropriation, but get the cash. And in the same vein, I would like to see University of Guam, the GCC, and the judiciary and every other agency as we move along in this budget. I want them to get not only their appropriation, but the cash to back it up. Now, there was a statement made a little bit yesterday by another senator who said, well, obviously, the administration, the governor, and BBMR, they have that capability, and they do. That's BBMR's role. Unfortunately, BBMR hasn't been here this week. But if things aren't going along, they can change, and they can effectuate reductions in spending in regards to allotment release based on actual cash collections and tracking. In the past, how it's been in these tough times, BBMR would do it. They'd contact judiciary, they'd contact the legislature, they'd contact DPW and say, folks, things aren't working as good as we like, and collections aren't there. So from here on forward, and of course it would be usually an official letter, you're gonna have to work on a 10% reduction and see what you can do there. Unfortunately, we don't know right now. As things have occurred, we're having appropriations. BBMR is not saying, guys, we got to cut back by 10%, 10%, 10%. It's more, what it appears when I talk to agencies, it's, well, we need our money, and, well, we're trying. We're not sure. It's all about the here and the now. I don't see a lot of what is actually happening and projecting forward. And so when the statement was made by the earlier senator about allowing the governor and the administration, BBR, to allow exercise their authority, I'm almost stepping out of line here and assuming, but from what I gather, it has not been occurring. And it's much, much more, it's much more incumbent on all of us that we do play conservative. And we don't make a promise to you folks through a piece of paper, and it doesn't happen. My colleagues, we've just cut over the past few days over $20 million in revenues. Even before we did that, and I looked at this bill, again, what my impressions were, was number one, 2.5%. And the administration has told us of all this major crisis that's going on. 2,000 furloughs by the end of the month. 2.5%. Increased borrowing, increased taxation. Even before going through all the numbers, I was just me. I'm saying, man, I don't know if this is enough. We are in a terrible situation right now, and is this enough? Especially in light of credit watch by Standard & Poor's. So my caution here is, with $20-some million in cuts in revenues, this is not enough of a cut. We have made it not enough of a cut. And as we move along, and guess what? This amendment may pass. And just the same way as the Guam Public Library's amendment just passed, and as we move along and any one of my colleagues also proffers an amendment to restore funding, it may pass. But in the end, and I'm going to ask you that question, will it be a hollow victory? So, my colleagues, Chief Justice, you have my assurance as Finance Chair that you are a priority. This agency is a third branch of government, and whatever I can do as chairman, I will protect the interests of judiciary, the same as healthcare and education. Sometimes some of the decisions I may make, and whether I raise my hand or lower my hand, I hope you don't take it personally, or you don't feel you feel that I'm picking on you, because I assure my colleagues, and I assure you that whatever burden that is placed upon you, ultimately that burden will be placed upon the legislature and the governor. That is my assurance. And that's all I have to say at this point on the motion.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. On the motion to delete Section 17 of Chapter 4, Senator Palacios, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to make a point of clarification that indeed the proposed reduction here is only 2.5%. It's only about $504,000 and I think 41. Anyway, it's only 2.5%. The second clarification that I like to point out, reference to previous testimony, is that it's not true that the executive branch increased by 250%. And I look at the current budget breakdown, actually the original submittal, and the total reflecting of 26.4 million actually reflect only the total of amounts included in the breakdown, but there are departments in the breakdown that do not have figures. And so the proposed amendment, now every department has a figure. And so probably when they add all that, then of course, but that remains to be seen. But that's one clarification that I'd like to point out. Now my comment on the proposed amendment, if I were to support the restoration, then I have to do it for all the agencies, which means that I have to vote against the bill itself in its entirety. And if I were to support the proposed cut, it is not because I don't want the judiciary to retain the original amount. It is because I want to continue to cut on other agencies as we move forward. And that is the only way that I can feel, I guess, justified and fair, is to just apply these cuts, even to this legislature, 2.5%. I will support the cut. And that's my remark regarding this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. Senator Shimizu.
Mr. Chairman, before I have my extended comments, I stand in support of the motion by my good chairman, Senator Espadon, and in part it's because of it's a matter of principle. What I heard earlier, that our fine speaker gave a very eloquent lecture on the three branches of government and the respect and the customs and tradition that involves. And I understand that when this was submitted to the legislature, there was no consultation. Absolute no respect. Taza respeto malingu alegro. Common courtesy that the people that we have here before us, they're not agencies, they're another branch of government. And one branch of government does not acknowledge that, nor does it acknowledge the legislature. I have no problems in cutting our budgets, but I really believe that if indeed we are really three branches of government, there should be a minimum of consultation. Because then maybe if they had made that consultation to the judiciary, they may have said yes. But how about you? What are you going to do? You're talking about cutting. But for consultation, you cut. And you cut the other branch. But you did not cut yourself. On the contrary. On the contrary. You spared yourself. And in addition to that, we can appropriate all that we want to the purse strings. But when it comes time to spreading out the expenses, we can talk during certain seasons that education, health, and public safety, and surely the judiciary is part of public safety, because to deny or even delay a person, their due process is really just to deny them their right. So just based on that premises, I have a bad taste in my mouth, man. Maybe what we should have done is go first to the governor's office and to the lieutenant governor's office, and then cut it down so that everybody, because I don't hear the judiciary saying they're not going to do their share. They're saying we are in the same boat, but in different class. The first class is for the governor, and the rest of the other branches is probably has no class at all, because there was no consultation. We all have to make our decisions and report to the people on what we do. But I honestly believe that, if we don't have this kind of respect between the three branches of government, it just kind of bothers me a lot in terms of our removing from a democratic form of government to that of a very unitarian, form that this is what you're going to get. I mean, it really impinges. Let the judiciary decide what they want to do. And then let the governor line item veto if he wants to do. But let them submit in their budget as they see fit. And let the governor say, well, there is no cash, I will line item. He has that power to line up. And on top of that, he has the power of the purse strings in terms of releasing the cash. And you, Mr. Chairman, as you had done so well by speaking to the Director of Bureau of Budget, and maybe that's why they're not here. Because at every time, is this correct, that 82% of allotment releases are going to certain agencies, and in other areas it's not? So I just speak based on that principle of customs and tradition. You can appropriate all we want, but I think waha respeto gatsong ni mamalo na branch government. Have that kind of respect. And when I see their testimony saying, however, this is coming from the director of the courts, Mr. Perry Taitano. He says, we will continue to be frugal and manage our dwindling resources in a responsible manner in spite of the public finance morass facing our community. However, we do want to express our concerns with what appears to be inequity in the revised budget proposal presently before the legislative body. In review of that proposal, on one hand, we see the executive branch increasing its fiscal year 2007 operations over 250% from 26.2 million to 66.1, and he's going to lecture us on cuts and still increase himself. The courts is saying, I say not. We are all going to have to pull together the three branches of government. And it must be fair. If we are going to cut, and even if we have to cut deeper, he should be able to do that. He should be able to do that. And like I said earlier, no consultation, no respect, total disregard for customs and traditions. And if people say, well, money, it's Taza money, throw all customs and traditions. I tell you, customs and traditions are much more valuable than some of the dollars that we have. And yes, we will go back to increase some of the other agencies where it is in education. If that's our priorities, that's where we should put our money. But to deny again another branch of government and keep them out and say you're not part of that public safety priority is a great injustice to the people of Guam, you know. It really is a great injustice to the people of Guam because like I said, you know, justice delayed is justice denied. And I kind of feel that what, you know, it's like saying millions for defense but not a penny of tribute. This is what I see it is, Mr. Chairman. So I support my good Chairman of Judiciary, Senator Spadona, and I ask each and every one of us, if for anything else, bring back respeto and bring back order among the three branches of government. Because if we don't have that customs and traditions of mutual respect, this government will not do the best kind of service for the people. It would absolutely do an injustice. So, you know, like I said earlier, I stand in support of that. And then maybe what we should do, Mr. Chairman, so that we don't have to work about all the different agencies, where I want to increase is in education, health, and public safety. Those are the three cornerstones. Those are the basics of what the people of Guam are asking. My Lord, 250%. How much is that? Let's say I mentioned earlier, I said, man, look at the budget they're going to give the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office. Wow, maybe I should run for lieutenant governor. It's about $1,083,000, you know. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. The people are asking that we deal with the healthcare system. The people are asking that we deal with public safety. And the people are asking for education. And I will continue to do that. And if we have to cut more in other areas that do not have those three linchpin for what the people of Guam is going to, then we'll be having more of a problems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to pontificate on this customs and tradition.
Thank you very much, Senator Shimizu. Senator Jesse Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Mr. Chairman, the more we get into this this bill, Bill 74, you see that's been transmitted to this body, the more I'm satisfied in how I'm going to vote on this bill. You know, the components of this bill were an increase in our GRT, a borrowing component, cut all the agencies, all the branches of government with the exception of the executive branch. I don't remember this democratic government transforming into a monarchy. Maybe I was sick that day and didn't come to session when we transformed from that to a monarchy. I don't remember that we had elected a king, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion, and I can't wait to get to the executive branch to make a motion to cut his budget by 50%. It's tragic when a body of 15 has made health, education, and public safety a priority. And Mr. Chairman, tonight I will be in possession of a memo that has been circulated at GMH that will say that basically a critical specialty will be off island for probably a number of weeks. And Guam will be void of that specialty. So if we happen to have a family member, or maybe even one of us, happen to need that specialty, maybe the monarchy can himself be the answer to this thing, because I don't think that being void of that specialty will have any help on this island. Mr. Chairman, health, education, and public safety has been a priority, not just of this body, but of the executive branch as well. To do any less, to not continue to adhere to those important areas and critical areas in running the government, is to be derelict of our duty in times of need, in times of a government that needs to make a cut. And a 50% in cut of the executive branch will force the monarchy to reduce the size of his operations. When and if that size of that operation has been reduced and can further, and our people have not been helped, then maybe we can look at other areas. I'm glad that this body had deleted the increase of GRT. We have a borrowing component that will further, if enacted, will further deteriorate our community. Because it wouldn't just be passed on to future generation, we're dealing with it now. Mr. Speaker, earlier in the week, I had a public hearing to keep the executive branch's hands off an autonomous agency from pilfering from that agency, to lessen our borrowing component, to putting us in junk bond status, to be again against the covenants of the way we borrowed. Mr. Chairman, yes, we are in dire straits. But the leader of this government must stand up and be the leader and must cut from his operations before filtering down to the critical agencies, the critical needs of this government. I'm going to close, Mr. Chairman, with this, and we are getting into the Lenten season. We are in the Lenten season, but going into Holy Week. When Jesus Christ went to Calvary, and his 12 apostles, Jesus Christ went to Calvary and took it for each and every one of us. This leader must step up and set an example. Jesus Christ didn't say, cut off the throats of my 12 apostles. He went up there. This leader must step up. And for him to continue to lead, he must cut his operations in half. He must look at his agencies that are not critical to health, education, and public safety. And those are the first things that must be sacrificed, as opposed to what this body and the executive branch had deemed critical, and as the people of Guam deemed critical. And like I said, in a few days, we will have a critical area void of a specialty that each and every one of us might be subjected to. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for having me speak on this motion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator Lujan. Senator Pangilinan?
Sidus Masin, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll break the pattern here and ask a question. The release or the non-release of $2.5 million in allotments, what has that caused you not to either implement or defer payment on for expenses already obligated?
It has affected operations to the extent that we have had to hold off from paying vendors. We're looking at having to look at all our contracts and reduce them where we can, use our people instead of PSA security guards, looking at use of vehicles, 2 or 3 folks at a time rather than one, so that lengthens the day and does not allow us to fulfill court orders. We have gone into supplies. The difficult thing that we have, Senator, is that only represents about 13% of our total appropriation. So we have not filled vacancies. We have not made promotions. And the only promotion that we've made is because we'll be in violation of Fair Labor Standards Act. I have received a letter from probation officers, and that's just court employees, saying, when are we going to get our promotions? Notwithstanding the fact that they have earned it, we can't implement it. And that cut has impacted us squarely on personnel. We've done everything that we can with our contracts. We've done everything that we can with our supplies. we are reassessing what we have with regard to contracts, but I think we've pretty much cut it to the bone. It's impacting directly on personnel. It's hurt morale, and we are not able to carry out court orders the way they should be in a timely fashion, simply because of these cuts.
So if this cut of 600,000 was restored, what would you use it for? For those very purposes, funding promotions?
Right. Well, no, sir. Actually, if we could at least pay a hazardous pay, comp time is building up. We'll be in violation of Fair Labor Standards Act. We need to cash out the comp time. It's having to make do with something we don't have. You know, that's a difficulty as an administrator, as a manager of an organization that gives me the marching orders that I'm barely not able to carry out.
Are there vacancies in the budget that you submitted? Are there vacancies in there that are funded but have remained unfilled?
Yes.
And
That's
what's the dollar value there? Any idea?
$500,000. Tony's best guess.
So the vacancies. So if this $500,000 cut was not restored, most likely the result, other than the delay or the suspension of promotions and hazardous pay and cashing out of comp time, that those would continue to be suspended. But more important, well, maybe not more importantly, more importantly, those would continue to be suspended, and you would still be not able to fill those positions.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also, Senator, it just defers our obligations. We're still counting that we are going to see part of that, those funds. So it's deferring, making good on the obligations that we have.
And those obligations are.
It could be vendors, it could be indigent counsel, defense. It just means stretching it out. Instead of paying them within 45 days, we pay them within 60 to 90 days.
But the Indigent Defense Council is not part of this budget. It's a separate line item. Is that correct?
Well, it's part of we only get a lump sum. There's no, they're not specifically allocated in terms of X amount gets this cash, X amount gets, it's a lump sum budget. So if the cut we were to receive is 500,000, that means the total dollars we have available to fund our operation is reduced by that amount.
Okay, because I thought I saw a line item for Indigent Council at 700,000 or somewhere in it.
That's the Indigent Council Trust Fund, but our
Okay.
Indigent Council expense is about $1.5 million.
I see. Okay. The release of the allotments has that caused you to run an operating deficit? And the question I want to be more specific on, is there anything that you have obligated yourself to for whatever contractual obligations or operating expense that you have consumed, so to speak, and not paid?
Yes, we've committed ourselves to a very important project, and that's document imaging, and that's for us to go paperless with respect to the court operations. But we can only go part way with it. We can't implement the whole program. You need the servers. You need to have the training has already been undertaken. Our people are ready to carry on the project. We just can't implement it. We also have backup servers. We are now for the network, right? And the problem is when we have a power outage, we put at risk what we have in the database without that backup server. The upgraded security system, we can't implement that. We found some areas that needed immediate attention with regard to safety of court patrons, court employees, and the judges most importantly. Yet we can't implement that. we're going to have to strain our marshals. We've even discussed using probation officers who've been trained in the use of taking down, unruly people, trained like marshals to be like marshals. And I suspect that I'm going to be in trouble if I use them to do that. But that's where we are. We can't fill the positions simply because we can't make ends meet.
How about your overtime? How's your overtime situation?
We have been going on flex time since day one. We've been trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Is there what's your budget for overtime? There's no
There's
budget.
none.
Okay. What are you paying in overtime?
Right. Well, how much have we paid? What is the dollar amount, if any, that we've paid for overtime? I thought I recall about 61,000. Is that an accurate figure?
Basically. But a lot of the people that are going on, that are working extra hours are not being paid for that. They're all converting it to comp time.
Okay.
But to date, in actuality, have we paid anyone overtime?
Yeah. Other than from the conversion of comp time to a cash.
I'm not sure of the numbers in that.
Okay.
Is there an estimate, Tony, that you can give?
I'm not sure.
Have we paid anyone overtime?
I don't believe so.
I don't think.
No. I'm inclined to support this because of the fact that the allotment release has not come about. And as you say, we're not in a vacuum. We realize the financial realities facing each and every single department and agency. And kind of just thinking of a creative way to resolve this issue in terms of ensuring that we kind of all share the burden. It's unfortunate that you're sharing more of the burden than the other departments and agencies in the fact that the release for your operations have been shortchanged. What have you used, Perry, to make up for, in other words, if 83% of your budget is payroll, 85%, and your total appropriation is about 20 million from the general fund side, and that that's almost $2.5 million over a 6-month period. That's almost 20%. What have you been doing? What have you been using in terms of the cash to make sure that you don't have a payless payday, or you make sure that all of your retirement fund contributions are up to date, which I assume they are? Are they?
Yes,
Okay.
it's really at the expense of our vendors. We're just holding off as much as we can. And we speak to them, we inform them of the situation. They are kind enough to say we'll be patient, but we have a good faith effort that we're going to pay for those services already rendered.
Yeah.
And also, Senator, there is we have certain contingent liabilities. There is accrued annual and sick leave that should really be set aside to make good when they are utilized. And so these funds are being used to pay payroll. The good practice should be that if X amount is appropriated for someone's accrued annual and sick leave, you don't deplete that to pay your current operation. That should be set aside to everyone in the government and the court should take their leave, that we have enough cash to fund that because you've given us those funds. You've appropriated that money.
Yeah.
But that, when I question that, we can't do that. We don't have the luxury of doing that. We have to use that for our operation.
Yeah, and or else you would just use your regular payroll account to pay for the sick leave, since the regular payroll is deferred when they're on sick leave, and only the sick leave accrual, can then kick in, and you just kind of book entry. The cash remains the same outlay, but the book entry is changed from the accrued sick leave, and you debit there, and so forth. So but I understand exactly what you're saying. The way that I thought we could resolve this matter in terms of not shortchanging the court, given how you've been already shortchanged, is to possibly consider making the cut or restoring it, but allowing the cut to be credited against your releases for your back allotments. For example, you have $2.5 million in unreleased allotments. We say we restore the 500. For every $3 of back allotments that you get, they are able to reduce $1 in this restored 500, so that at the end of the day, you would, if everything goes to plan, at the end of the fiscal year, everybody gets cut 5. But what is most important is you get your back allotments restored, and then your end cut at the end of the fiscal year would be 5% like everybody else. And I know that may be a little bit of a I don't want to say, it's definitely not a hollow victory, number one, because you get the authorization levels back, but it also gives an incentive to the administration and the people controlling the allotments that if they do want to be able to achieve a savings, that they've got to bring you up to par first, then make the cut, not cut you from your current deficiency of 2.5. And again, that's just, it's a way of kind of thinking about how we make sure that everybody shares in the pain, because I don't want them to think that if we cut the 500 that, they continue to defer giving you any of the 2.5, because that would be just devastating to the operations of the court. And we don't want to even give them that idea that we're going to cut this 500,000 and we'll continue to defer giving you your back allotments. So I don't want to make that an emotion yet. I think maybe that's a thought out there that I think will ensure that you don't get cut more than 5. And the only way that you can get cut that 5 is if they bring that 2.5 back up. So that's just an idea that I'm thinking about in order to ensure that it is equitable. At the end of the fiscal year, the cut is equitable. It's not like you get 500,000 of your allotment, they cut the 500,000, and you're still owed the 2 million. You're getting cut, 40% at the end of the fiscal year versus the 2.5 or the 5% of having those things restored. So that's in terms of how we can handle that here. In the end, it may just turn into just a matter of semantics, but the only control we have over the budget is the expenditure levels and the authorization to expend or cut to those levels authorized by this body. And anything beyond that is done at the discretion of the executive with regards to their ability to withhold and release cash as they occur. So I fully understand and empathize with the court, the services that you provide and the efficiencies that you want. I know you've gone into some technology initiatives like online filing and things like that present a more efficient system, a better access by the public to the courts and its consumers of services that save them time and saves you time and money, most importantly. So I don't want to put any of those in jeopardy. But as you say, the financial crisis of this government is not happening in a vacuum, and it all is going to have to touch all of us. And so that's the question. Those are the questions I have. Those are my thoughts on this matter, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank you for allowing me to ask these questions and thank the panel for their indulgence in answering them.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Senator Gutherts, on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello to everyone from the judiciary. In listening to all the discussions today and yesterday, I just have to ask myself, how did our government come to this? Where the most important institutions in our island society are being pushed in a corner in terms of their ability to function the way they're supposed to. Yesterday, we heard from the university. The governor's proposing to cut the university's budget by $616 million. The university has not received almost $7 million this fiscal year. And now they're going to face another cut of $616 million. Yesterday, I moved to delete that cut unfortunately, my action did not receive the support of my colleagues. Some of the colleagues supported it, but not all of the colleagues here. Same thing happened to GCC. GCC is missing about $3 million from their budget for this fiscal year so far. And the governor proposed to cut their budget by $182,000. I moved to delete that cut. Again, didn't pass. 2 years ago, this legislature said its priorities were education, public safety, and health. In the last election, almost every single candidate said their priorities are education, health care, and public safety. Our governor said the same thing over and over and over. And now, it seems that some of us are willing to withdraw that priority because of the money situation, not recognizing that there are other ways to make the cuts that are needed for this government to be able to operate. I have thought of 42 different ways. There are some agencies and some instrumentalities of government that are much more important than others. But there seems to be a great reluctance on the part of our leaders to prioritize, truthfully prioritize what's important. And they want to treat everybody the same and cut everybody the same. In the case of this bill, it's 2.5%. Well, I believe some agencies should be cut 10% and maybe 20%. And as was suggested, one particular area maybe 50%. But certainly not anything to do with education, health, or public safety. I support deleting the cut for the judiciary because what's happening in our island today is scary. The social dynamics on Guam, the civil issues that erupt on our island, the criminal issues that erupt on our island require us to have a judicial branch that is ready 24 hours a day to respond. The domestic issues in our island, the victimization of children, battered women, mistreated people require that we have a judiciary that's ready to respond 24 hours a day. And ladies and gentlemen, there are some things in government where you cannot and should not have austerity. In particular, when it comes to saving lives in the health arena, when it comes to nurturing minds in the education arena, and when it comes to the public safety of our people. So I will support the motion of my colleague to delete the cut to the judiciary, and I will take this opportunity to also commend the judiciary for its self-scrutinization on how it's managed its monies. I know if this legislature supports this cut to your budget, this will exasperate your circumstances, because I don't think you're going to get the money that's owed to you for 07. Something in my mind tells me, just like yesterday, I said it to the university, they're owed $7 million, GCC's owed about $3 million. I don't think they're going to get that money. And I certainly don't want to contribute to any further disarming of these critical institutions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Guthertz. Senator Bloss, you're recognized on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, Chief Justice and everyone that's here, thank you for coming out on a Saturday. I feel good when I'm not the only one that has to come in. And it's just a concern, really, of where we're at, today with our financial status here with the government. I want to make the record straight here. You know, I continue to believe that the priority of this government should be health, education, and public safety. I also believe, Chief Justice, that we should also consider judiciary as part of, you know, those three, the foundation. I also believe, Chief Justice, that there should be parity amongst the three branches of government. I grew up learning about the three branches of government. I still believe in the three branches of government. I also appreciate, you know, the recognition of the judiciary that we are in financial dire straits, and that you are also willing to do your part in being able to help us fix this problem. I also appreciate the fact that, you know, if you need to take the cuts, that you appreciate that you want the parity. And I say this because, you know, as we go through this budget, I agree with my colleague, the good senator from Sinonia, Mingilao, or Barragata Heights. I don't know which house she stays in at night. I agree with her that, you know, as we go through this budget, there are maybe some other agencies that, instead of the 2.5 or the 5% cut that they got, that maybe we can cut a little bit more. And in cutting a little bit more, we can probably realize some savings, or we can move some of that money to those areas. It is because of that, is because we haven't gone through that whole process. That, and believe you me, Chief Justice, mark my word, when we get to those agencies, I too am going to stand in firm belief for parity. Okay? I think this is something that we have to share throughout the government. And I appreciate and I thank you for that. This is not it's not an easy thing to do. It's just as hard for us to make these decisions, and it should be just as hard for us to make these decisions and these matters with regards to where the money should go. As hard as is it for the entity, the branch of government that you all represent, to be able to live within those means. I am just concerned that if we don't take this opportunity today, and today may stretch until tomorrow, but when this thing gets done, that if we don't do our due diligence to ensure that the resources that are needed to provide the very basic services that this government should provide, which includes public safety, which includes the judicial portion of our government, that at the end of the day, we may not have any money for anything. You know, I've got, and it's just waiting in the wings. Basically, maybe it'll be an amendment to this bill, or maybe it'll be a bill that I'll introduce, that would basically force all of us, and when I say all of us, this the government of Guam, to finally live within its means. That if we say that this is all the money that and I'm not talking about revenues, and I'm not talking about projections, I'm not talking about allotments, I'm talking about cash. If this is all the money that we have, then this is all the money that we spend. In recognition, too, of the money that we owe to other people. So, Chief Justice, and please, the other members of the judiciary, please don't take I'll tell you right now, my objection to the restoration of your funding to the levels as a means of saying that, no, I don't appreciate what you're doing. Just remember that at the end of the day, after we cut everybody down, and there's going to be cuts, that we pray, like Senator Guthers has said, there's going to be some agencies where I'm going to stand here and say, I think we need to cut them down a little bit more than just that. That I don't have a problem later on of actually looking at how much we've got left and sparing the judiciary, possibly restoring fullback. It's just, please give me the opportunity to go through the whole budget. Thank you for voicing your concerns. Thank you for being here. It means not only a lot to the employees of the judiciary, but it means a lot to the people of Guam. That you took the time to be able to come down and defend one of the three branches of government that we so direly need to continue to exist. And also thank you for recognizing that we've got a financial problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, at this time, notwithstanding any of the rules, I'd like to yield my time back to Senator Shimizu.
Senator Shimizu, I understand you also have a point of information?
Yes, thank you, Senator Barnes, for yielding your time to me. Mr. Chairman, I was just going through so many documents, but let me just lay the foundation. On the Governor's Bill 74 EC, page 27, okay? And maybe Perry and Dan would know this, or the comptroller. On line 20, you guys have the same music, see? Line 20, reversion of unencumbered and unexpended continuing appropriation. Are you familiar with this provision and what it would do? You know what it would do? Let me tell you what I think it would do, and just correct me if I'm wrong. Notwithstanding any other provisions of law, all unexpended, unencumbered, continuing general fund appropriation as of March 31st, 2007, contained in section of Public Law 28-150 shall revert to the general fund. That's lapse funds. Those are lapse funds. If the Governor's Bill goes through, whatever lapses that you have as of March 31st, which is today, you won't have it. And have you made adjustments, that, or have you encumbered any of those, if you have any lapses? Because that's coming from, it repeals section 19 of Public Law 2868. I just wanted to point this out, because we use lapses too. So continuing appropriation for the judiciary of Guam, the appropriation made to the judiciary of Guam pursuant to subsection 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 of chapter 3 of Public Law 2868 shall continue until all sums appropriated therein are expended. So you're authorized to do that. In this bill 74, it takes that away from you, that amount. So I just wanted to know, in your letter or in your analysis of the bill, did you take that into account, that would further erode the cash that will be coming to you?
Senator, my understanding is that we have about $900,000 in lapses for the prior fiscal year, but we're just hoping that the $2.5 million in current allotment releases that have not been released will be funded. We're not holding our breath that there's any cash to fund the $900,000. So if they take that away from us, that's something that may not necessarily have any cash to back itself up with. So we're just hoping that we get that 2.5.
Yeah, because earlier I was listening, I was looking at the figures you mentioned, and I just wanted to flag that maybe you didn't present the 900,000 in lapses that would be taken away. Just to let you know.
We understand that.
Okay.
I mean, we had planned to use that to make certain purchases relating to the tools that would be available for our employees. But if that's not there, then we just have to reprioritize and look at our plans again.
Okay. So that's an additional hit, another 900,000 taken away, because I didn't catch it. I was just reading some of this other stuff, and I stumbled into that because the way it's written here in this bill, it just say it's in miscellaneous appropriation, and then you have to go back in history and in time. And I'm just wondering if you did that. Travel back in time to realize that $900,000 is going to be gone once this is enacted, on top of the slash in your budget, and then on top of the amount of monies that you guys haven't been getting. You got a triple whammy, like a triple bogey, and so it just for point of information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Barnes.
Thank you, Senator Simizu. Is anyone else on the motion? No one else will speak on the motion. Senator Espadon, to close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I move to close on the motion, I'd like to say a few words to my colleagues. I know that there are some here. There are probably some in their offices who are watching this on TV while they do take other business into account. However, I think after all we've heard right here today, all the discussion and all the pontification and the opinions expressed by my colleagues, I think we have to come back down to the very basic tenet that I had started this whole proceeding with, is that the judiciary is a third branch of government. Other senators have kind of equated the judiciary with other branches of government, and how we can affect them to perhaps give up some of the funding that we as a body have actually given to them. Now, the point has been made, and everybody here in this room acknowledges that we are in dire straits. However, I do want to point out to this body that the judiciary has not been a part of that process to bring us to this point. The legislative body and the executive branch work hand in hand in terms of the budget and what we spend and the finances of this government. The judicial branch is not involved in that process. And when we take a look at what has happened and how they have managed their branch of government, I have to say that we have to admire and maybe try to emulate what they're doing over there. To take away from what they are doing, take into consideration, fully acknowledging that they are a third branch of government, not some line agency, not some autonomous agency, not UOG and not GCC. And again, I feel for all the agencies and all the government parts of government that are going to be affected by this. I do not believe that the judiciary should be held responsible in any way. Now, if they want to contribute in decreasing their budget, fully acknowledging the crisis we're in, then that's a decision I believe that they should make on their own. If they cannot afford it, then they will make that call. They are working within their budget. I have been at the court, I have worked with the court, and I acknowledge that, yes, they make do with the funds and the resources that they have to the best of their abilities, in spite of the fact that they have not been giving full funding all these past few years as well as this year. And yet they do make the intelligent cuts. They do make the intelligent sacrifices where they have to. But they have not been part of the problem. And this is the message I want to resonate in my colleagues' ears at this point in time. The legislature and the executive branch in their negotiation for this 2007 fiscal year budget are the ones who have set the revenues, the revenue projections, as well as the potential spending that this government should oversee. The judiciary has not been a part of that process. So to ask them at this point in time, or not even ask them, but to basically come out and say, yes, we are going to cut this funding that we have actually already decided was in your best interest and is at the level that we see appropriate, to come in and say, now we're going to have to cut it, even knowing full well that they have used their resources very intelligently and very wisely, would be a travesty, definitely. Because, again, we are not talking about a light agency here. We are talking about a third branch of government. And I think that point has got to be made over and over and over again because a lot of people do not understand that. And so when I made this motion to repeal this section of the bill, it's not because I don't want everybody to share in the cost cutting of this, but I believe that this decision has got to be left to this branch of the government, not to us. If they feel that they have the ability to make a contribution to lessen the financial crisis that we're facing, then so be it. But it should be their decision. Mr. Chairman, I would like to have a call of the House. Anybody who was here earlier and spoke on the motion?
Senator Espadon, let me have a call for a 1-minute recess.
Thank you.
Senator Espadon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, at this point in time, I'm going to concede. But I did want to make one last point, if I may, and just to add it on. And again, I stand in support of this motion. I still stand in support of this motion. But there's one last point I want to make to our colleagues here, that as we progress through this bill, we still have the ability and we still have the authority and we still have the power to make changes to effectuate and find how we can actually offset this proposed deduction from the court by finding other ways where we can actually cut costs in other areas of the government as well as raise revenues by other means. And that's why when we do start taking a look at this budget, and I know that there are those in here who, some of my colleagues may not be happy with this, but again, I stand firm that the third branch of government should be given their due. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, you recognize.
I realize that he's closed, but I'd like to beg the indulgence of the body to allow me to speak, because I think I have an idea that might resolve our little dilemma here.
Notwithstanding the House rules, Mr. Speaker, you're recognized.
You know, we're caught in an existential crisis here at the moment that I think is primarily procedural in nature. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I think Senator Pangilinan had a wonderful idea when he was talking about his, offsetting it against the $2.5 million in cash. I thought that was a great idea. I think Senator Guthert's plea with respect to the priority areas is in fact the way we originally budgeted in the first place. You know, this particular budget was designed to reflect higher priorities for education, public safety, and health, and lower priorities in other areas. And I think all of us, I know myself, yesterday when we were talking about UOG and GCC, I really wanted those cuts restored, because I think that if we're going to be true to the priorities we ourselves are established, we ought to look at that. At the same time, I recognize the discomfort some people have, and I think I finally figured out what it is. I think the discomfort that some people have is there's a lot of agencies left in this budget. And there are some of us who think that we ought to go through them and make cuts before we restore. And I think about that for a minute, and it doesn't seem unreasonable to me that we go through a process of making further cuts in other departments and agencies before we start restoring even to the priority areas first, just so everyone has a handle on what we are going to wind up with. It's kind of like what's been suggested, which is simply that if we restore these things, we can then proceed to make further cuts. It's just a little bit backwards, and it might give us an opportunity to explore some ideas like Senator Pangalinan's in a little greater depth, because I understand the difficulty he is having at this moment fashioning this amendment, because it's kind of outside the box.
No, already got it.
Oh, do you? Would you like to move on it?
I need to finish writing.
I know what I mean. Case in point. So here's what I'm suggesting. If we're going to vote on this amendment to restore, I want you to understand I'm going to vote to restore, just like I voted to restore GCC and UOG. But if it'll make the body more comfortable, perhaps what we ought to do is adopt a rule for the balance of this chapter, which is the chapter which contains the appropriations for the executive branch. as well as other parts, go through it and restrict ourselves to motions to increase cuts. And once we have gone through the process, in other words, for a while we stop entertaining motions to restore or even give, because that motion could always be made, folks, to give a higher degree of budgetary support to one particular department or the other. Make the cuts first. And after we've made the cuts in other areas, go back specifically to education, public safety, and health, and then move to restore cuts or do whatever it is that the collective wisdom of the body wishes to do in those areas. But maybe if we go through the process of making cuts in other areas first, there'll be a higher degree of universal comfort. Because frankly, as I speak to my colleagues on this subject here with the judiciary, there's nobody here that doesn't want to give the judiciary the full amount. There are some among my colleagues who are a little uncomfortable doing that right this second when they have no idea what the body is going to do with every other appropriation right now. They'd like to go through that process. So I just throw that out, that maybe what we can do is adopt a rule for the balance of Chapter 3, that as we go through Chapter 4, the executive branch departments and agencies, that we first cut. And if we're going to make motions, we make motions primarily to adjust numbers downward. And then when we're done doing that process, we come back and we look at in the 3 priority areas.
Mr. Chair, on this suggestion, am I in order to? But,
Mr. Speaker, are you asking? It would be the mover of the motion that would have to withdraw the motion prior to the.
Okay, good. So let's proceed with the. I mean, I wanted to comment on yours, if I may, but.
Okay, it would be the mover of the motion to withdraw the motion. However, the suggestion, we cannot entertain the motion that was made by the speaker. He's made a suggestion. However, I can revert back to the mover of the motion and be your privilege to either keep the motion or remove the motion, withdraw the motion. However, I will, if you want to continue with the motion, I will call for the vote.
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate what the speaker just offered, because that has been my discomfort from the very beginning. And again, I'm going to have to ask this body's indulgence because perhaps I am a rookie senator. I was expecting to go through this process that way anyway. And for some reason or another, it seems to me screwy the way we've been doing it. Again, going one by one, section by section, and determining whether we're going to make a cut or restore it right then and there, as opposed to taking a look at the bill as a whole. And then come back, limit ourselves to motions to reduce is what the speaker's saying, and then come back at the very end of this chapter and take a look if we can restore.
Yeah, we do have it. Yeah. One minute recess. The committee of the whole is called to order. Senator Espadon. Oh.
Mr. Chairman, I'm calling for the vote.
On the motion to delete section 17 of chapter 4. Is there an objection? There's an objection? There's an objection on the floor. Can we see all in favor of the deletion of section 17 of chapter 4? By raising your hands, please. No. We're in the committee of the whole. Just show of hands. Show of hands. All in favor? All in favor for the deletion of section 17, chapter 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
9.
There's 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. On the motion to delete section 17, chapter 4, motion passes.
Thank you.
Stop counting.
Yes. The Chief Justice would like to say something.
I just want to express to all of you, I understand the difficulty of your job, and I very much appreciate the support. The only thing I can say is that by us continuing to do our job and do it efficiently, I think your confidence will be well served in terms of the services that we provide to the community. And I sincerely thank you, and to all of you, even those who didn't vote in support. I understand the situation you're in, and I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and for your confidence in the people up here that are in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I'd like to go ahead and dismiss the judiciary. Thank you very much for your presence here this afternoon. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. 1 minute recess.
Increase cuts to, or to further cuts to various and sundry appropriation items, and only after doing that will we come back and take a look at restorations or anything along those lines. But I do think that in order to ensure that everyone's comfortable here as we proceed, the statement that we should be looking at cuts first is a valid one. So, notwithstanding the fact that I did vote to restore judiciary, I do think that from here on in, that's how we ought to do it. Otherwise, I fear what we're going to do is be entertaining nothing but votes to restore from here to the end of Chapter 4.
On the motion, Speaker Pico? 1 minute recess.
I know you're probably wondering what happened during the recess. I just lost my hair is what happened. I got very bookshin and I lost my hair. And I'm wearing a T-shirt with glasses on. As I am chairing the Committee of the Whole of this particular interim chair for this moment, I would like to establish a rule that for the balance of Chapter 4, that we restrict ourselves first to motions to cut.
I just wanted to correct you, Mr. Chairman. You're still the chief chair for this.
I know. As Speaker, I am theoretically the default chair for the Committee of the Whole, but Chief Chair. So the rule I'd like to establish for the balance of Chapter 4 is that as we go through Chapter 4, we'll entertain motions to cut. In other words, these motions will be to increase cuts. Now, if we go through the entirety of Chapter 4, no one wants to make a motion to cut anything. That's entirely up to the body. Yeah. But I'm just saying that we will go through Chapter 4 once, entertain motions to make cuts in Chapter 4. Yeah. If there are motions to restore cuts or motions to do other things, that'll be perfectly fine, but only after we first go through the entirety of Chapter 4 and entertain a series of motions to cut.
Yeah, just a question. As long as it's cut, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, if the governor proposes to cut $10, and we say, well, yes, there'll still be a cut, but make it like $9. That's not a...
no, that's a motion to increase.
That's
if the governor says cut $10... I'm
just trying not to ask. It's still a cut.
I know.
Still a cut.
No, it's not still a cut. All right, here's how it works. Using the example of
Senator... I didn't increase it. It's still cut.
You added $1 from the proposal bill. If there's an item there that says cut $10, a motion will be entertained to cut it $12. But a motion to cut it $5 is a motion to partially restore. Okay? Also, because of the construction of Chapter 4, where there are many lumped items together, we will entertain a motion to extract. If you want to pull out a budget for one particular department or agency and take it out of the lump, that's fine, so long as the result of what you're going to do is a cut. Now, if later on you want to extract something because you want to give them more, that's up to you, but we're only going to deal with that after we first do cuts. Is that understood?
It's understood, but
Yeah.
only for the balance of what we
Chapter
have already done, right?
Yeah, we're not going to go backwards.
Okay. Now,
Ma'am? No, there are objections to that, but Senator Guthertz, I realize this is your first committee of the whole. Perhaps afterwards you and I can have a conversation about the numerous ways there are to, shall we say, remove the integument from a cat. Okay? So,
Yeah.
Minor information issue.
what?
Oh, just minor information issue for the purposes of.
You may have a question?
No.
What?
Well, just
No, I know what you want to do. No. Okay, so I just want that
One
to
more.
be. I'm sorry, Dr. Shimizu.
yeah,
What?
when we go through and we do further cuts all the way down, okay. Now, will we have the people before us to be able to say how?
One
would this
certainly
cut?
hopes. We have Mr. Artie Logan here right now from Reverend Tax, but I don't see anyone else.
Yeah. But,
So-
the reason why I asked that again is out of customs and respect to the
Absolutely.
agency and ask them if we were to cut a certain percentage, or how would this cut impact you in terms of the policies or services. I just wanted to find out. That's
Well,
one.
Dr. Shimizu, we brought everybody so far, so I'm sure that's a program we'll
Yeah.
continue with.
Another thing, Mr. Chairman, when we come down to the bottom line, what is the mechanics that you're offering us to be able to go back out? Is it just through motion we're going to go up, and is there the
Once
chair
we
going to say?
are done, once
Yes.
we have gotten to the last line, the last item in Chapter 4, then the floor is open for restorations if there are any cuts you wish to restore, things of that nature, okay?
Okay, so we would do that on our own, not the chair.
It's not necessary for the chair to do it. It's once we've
Yes,
exhausted
okay.
all
I
the
just want to
cuts,
see
then
what you're.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Is the thing I mentioned about extraction clear? Okay. The way that the governor has this thing set up, he's got a large appropriation that covers a whole bunch of departments and agencies. And there may be members here who wish to extract a cut, but to a specific department and agency. So the chair will entertain motions to say, the budget for the Department of Labor that is contained in this vast single appropriation, this lump sum, I would like to extract that so that we can make a specific cut. Right. Senator Wampet?
Do you know if a list is available in terms of which departments and agencies are under that lump?
Yes, we
sum?
can.
Can we get a copy?
I'm
of
sure that we can
those?
get the administration to provide that. Furthermore, like I said, I have no problem. In fact, I don't see how any way that we can proceed without having directors here for that purpose. Senator Munya Barnes? I'm sorry? Well, that's something that'll come up when we get to that. Yeah, that's something we'll get to when we get to the mayor's when we get to the mayor's council. We can address that. But for now, there's okay. Okay, are we clear? I guess we're clear. Okay, we'll take a 1-minute recess.
Okay. The Committee of the Whole is back in order. We're in Chapter 4, Modifications to Public Law 28-150, General Appropriations Act of 2007. We're in Section 1, which is Department of Public Health and Social Services General Fund Appropriation. Senator Balaz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you give me some time here so I can get to that page. And first off, I want to thank Art, Pete, John, for being able to come out here, on a Saturday. It's first off, it's very good. It's very enlightening that at a moment's call, you're able to come down. We appreciate that. And as you know, that we're faced with some very difficult decisions here. And with regards to the decisions that we're going to have to make here. I'd like to give you the opportunity, if I can start with, I guess with you, Art, with public health, okay, with regards to the proposed cuts by the governor on the, I guess what Department of Public Health and Social Services is supposed to receive, what that is going to mean to your operations, and quite honestly, if you can live within this, okay, within these cuts, what are some of the things that you're going to need to do? All right, innovative ways to be able to deal with this. So, Art, you've got the floor.
Thank
okay?
you, Senator. Good afternoon, all the members of the Guam Legislature. I'm Art San Augustine. I'm the Acting Director of Public Health and Social Services. Mr. Chair and members of the Legislature, with regards to the proposed cuts for public health and social services for 2007 in the amount of $460,637, the management team of Public Health and Social Services and I have been meeting for several days. We have identified the means to meet the 460. The means to meet the 460 does not translate, again I repeat, does not translate into the reduction of any services. What it does mean for public health and social services is that we would have to forego a few match positions to be recruited. And so we focused our efforts on what is currently vacant and funded and authorized for 2007, given that the amount presented here of $18,425,480 is based on Public Law 2150, and they are reducing the appropriations level. Given that, we have identified in-house positions that would not be recruited. We would not impact on services. We have them by position title, as well as cost to what it would have cost public health and social services, or basically Gov Guam. You have more than $8 million?
We're in section 1, page 9, chapter 4, Department of Public Health.
And just for point of clarification, your budget that was presented in 28-150 was $18,425,480.
That is correct. Our operations personnel for GF is $18,425,480. That is correct, Senator.
And so there's a proposed reduction down to $17,964,843.
That is correct, Senator.
Okay. That amounts to how much less? $460,637.
That's what we've been working with in public health, is the reduction of $466.37.
Okay. With regards to where are you at right now in as far as your allotments and?
I have to apologize. Our ASO is out. She's out and is sick at this time, so she's not able to join us. She really tracks our allotments, but if there any specific area that I could look at the spreadsheet and I will do my best to give you a sense of where we are. Right now, it appears things are moving forward, but I can't give you an exact MIP. I'd have to go through this spreadsheet and do the best I can to read it out back to you. Are you looking at anyone specific?
Okay. You mentioned that some of the positions, the way you're going to be able to deal with this is, quite honestly, you're just not going to fill some positions that you've got, right?
That is correct.
What are these positions?
An admin aide, a program coordinator 4, secretary, a management analyst, admin. We went through all the different divisions, and so they're listed. They range from an admin aide to a bus driver, personnel officer, records management officer, environmental health specialist. We did not list any nurses, nor did we list any physicians. We always make the effort to maintain that those positions, we must continue and make every effort to recruit those positions.
Right.
Senator Blas, do you care to
Sure.
Speaker Forbes, please.
Just a follow-up question. Since you're talking about vacancies, I'm now consumed with curiosity. outside of nurses, doctors, and things like that, how many vacancies do you have up at Public Health and Social Services?
How many vacancies do we have in public health? We are just, on Monday, we will have an official staffing pattern, Mr. Speaker, on the number of funded positions. But I can tell you, the last count we had on Friday is I can tell you warm bodies.
No, I'm interested in vacancies.
I know. Vacant funded positions. I don't have, actually, no, I'm sorry. One moment. I have it. Just, we've been working on different spreadsheets. I just recall I do have them actually. If you give me just a few seconds,
Sure.
Senator, minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The way we were responding, if I may, Mr. Speaker, respond to your question, is actually we ran a list of the positions that we would forego recruitment for 07 to meet the
That's not what I'm asking.
Right, but I just wanted to explain that.
No, but I really would. I really
53.
would. You have 53 vacant positions at Public Health and Social Services? Of the 53 positions, how many are nurses or doctors?
Okay, I have to go back and count.
Okay, we'll get to that. Actually, again, remember Senator Blas had the microphone, and then he yielded to Speaker Forbes. Okay, and then we'll.
Based on the run that we've done so far, Mr. Speaker, we have 8 nursing positions vacant and 1 physician.
So of the 53 vacancies you have right now that are funded, 8 are nurses, 1's a physician, so the difference, which would be 44, are non-nursing, non-doctor type positions. In these fiscally austere times, given the cash situation, do you think it likely that in the remaining 6 months of the fiscal year, you would fill those 44 non-nursing, non-doctor positions before the fiscal year is over?
We hope to. Actually, we're just this week have signed off, and I believe
I'm sorry. Maybe I should ask this differently. Do you think, since I understand the executive order includes BBMR signing off on all GG1s, and there is a hiring freeze in place of sorts come April 1, based on the governor's thing, do you think that that BBMR would approve 44 non-nursing, non-doctor hirings? I only say that because, and I'm going to ask you this, I know you won't be able to tell me right away, but I will ask it at the end of this. I'm only saying this because off the top of my head, using the old standard $45,000 in salaries and benefits is the average compensation package for the average worker. That's not a small chunk of change. And that's currently writing on your budget. So I really need to know at some point here, could you give me 2 things? One, I'd like that list of vacancies that you've got in front of you, a copy of it, so I know what positions we're talking about. Because obviously you are a priority area. If we're talking about someone who is critical to client contact, that's something we'd all want to do. On the other hand, if we're talking about a secretary or we're talking about something else, maybe we wouldn't be so enthusiastic, or an administrator of some sort. And then I want you to give me also the grand total of the salaries plus benefits associated with those vacancies. Now, you probably can't do that right this second, but I'd like to have it before the end of the day.
Actually, we have it ready, sir. If you want to copy it, it's actually prepared. It's not enumerated, but their values.
Well, it needs to be in a way that I can understand what I'm looking at. So, even if you just circle those areas. Okay, what's the bottom line in the well, I guess the 52 vacancies at this
The
point.
vacant funded positions, which are comprised of GF or matched or 100% federal or special funds, it's 2.5
million, and it's all federal.
No, it's matched.
Oh, it's matched.
Combination of general fund, matched, or special fund.
So it's 2.5 in local money.
2.5.
In local money.
No, this is total, sir.
Okay, how much of it is local money?
We'd have to break that down further. That
Okay.
I'd have.
That's what I want to know.
Sure. Okay.
If you could, while you're answering questions, just every once in a while, take a look to your left and start working on that, just so you can have it by the end of the day. It's just a good thing to know, Art, because I mean, we keep hearing that the possibility of people losing their jobs, and if we're going to make somebody lose a job, but at the same time there's departments and agencies carrying funded vacancies, that would sure be a nice thing to know.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I give
Okay, thank
Senator
you very much.
Blas
Speaker
back his
Forbes.
time.
Senator Blas, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Art, along those lines of questioning, the questions that the speaker had brought to you, with regards to the 44, okay, I guess, and you also talked about 8 doctors and a nurse.
8 nurses and 1 physician.
Or 8 nurses and 1 physician, I'm sorry. Okay, let's talk about those 8 nurses and 1 physician. How much is that?
Okay,
you're still getting that one.
We're going to
All
need
right.
to add that up because they're just listed.
Okay,
They're not broken down by categories.
You know, and here, Art, again, the reason why I'm bringing this is I'm really struggling here with regards to, I recognize that, we're going to have to make cuts. I mean, it's inevitable, okay, in a number of places. But I'm concerned that, that you continue to have the tools, the personnel, the doctors, the nurses, right down even to the, to the lowest person on the totem pole in the organization, because they all play an integral part of your organization as a whole. I really am concerned, that what these cuts would actually mean, to you providing this service, continuing to provide the service. And I think you and I have had a number of conversations over the last couple of months with regards to some concerns that have been raised, and you know me, Art, I would rather call you and say, buddy, can we get this thing done, taken care of? And I appreciate the response that your agency has provided in being able to move positively in these, in resolving a lot of the issues. But as these, a lot of the concerns that we've talked about with regards to why these problems had come to light to begin with, centered around really, your need for the funding to be able to do things that you need to do. And I know that I'm talking very general and very broad here. But again, I just want to know. I mean, first off, can you honestly live within these cuts? I mean, first off, where are you at in as far as your allocation today?
We're going to get that information for you, Senator, through BBMR.
Okay.
Again, I'm sorry, my ASO is...
Not a problem. Not a problem. That's okay. And, it's Art, like, again, I appreciate at least somebody's here, and I'm glad to see that the head of the agency's here, to be able to answer the questions. And if you can't get the answers today, then, I think there's still a lot of time for us to be able to do this. It has been, again, you are an integral component of the public health. I mean, health, safety, and education. All right, and you are the cornerstone for for the health component. You in the hospital and mental health, You all play integral parts here. And my concern, again, is your ability to be able to live within these cuts. Okay? And you're sitting here in front of me today saying that, with $460,000 in the proposed cuts. Let me ask you just a point question here, Art.
Sure.
And it's not to say that I don't, I'm not going to telegraph as to what the answer I want. Can you afford any more cuts?
That would be rather difficult, Senator. This was a process that took us, as a management team, almost 2 days to identify positions that we're saying, okay, we're just not, we see the value of the position and what it can bring to the department, but we're saying, you know what, we're going to have to do what we need to do. There was a cut, and we're going to forego these efforts for now, and hopefully, as our economy bounces back, then we'd be able to make another argument and fund those positions. But it would be very difficult if you were to increase the cuts of public health and social services. I know you all know this. It's like preaching to the choir. There are key services that we provide. We have 2 health centers. We have environmental health. We have aging program services. So, we have welfare programs. I mean, we just run a whole gamut of services that when I feel like I'm going to be preaching to you all, but you all know this, that if people should become furloughed or laid off or they're not making enough, they come to our health centers, and we need to make sure our nurses are there and our doctors are there and our medical supplies are there and our medicines are there. So I know many of you are very, very seasoned, and some of you maybe new, but I know that many of you know this, and I'm not trying to preach to you, but I'm definitely very much involved in public health as the acting director, and I very much believe in our mission as a department, and we are here, but we cover all ages in our community, and we are a critical part, as you said, Senator.
And I thank you. I mean, that's exactly the answer that I wanted, because, I'm sorry, but like I said, I'm having a very difficult time even swallowing that we're going to have to make, if we have to, we're going to have to make these cuts. I just need the assurances from you that you can live within these means. Yeah.
Senator, I mean, what we're talking about is, just so we're all clear, is a 460.
Yeah.
And that's that amount we're working with is giving up a PC, giving up a secretary. Today in the director's office, and just sharing what we have, we do now just recently hired a private secretary, but we have no classified secretarial support in the director's office. So I've been without a secretary for months, but we do what we can.
Yeah, I recognize it because I have to call you on your cell. No, not a problem. And Art, I tell you what, I appreciate, because, actually I've seen you live within the means, and you've really struggled. You've really tried. Okay, and I applaud you for that. The responsiveness, that you haven't been able, with not having, that extra personnel that can help to help you with your scheduling and stuff. I think you've taken that on, on by yourself, and I applaud you for that. Art, I just want to say, like I said, this is a real struggle for me, okay? And I appreciate, and I just need for you to, again, my struggles will, I can probably deal with the struggle better if the more assurances that I get from you. And I know we're going to run into problems, okay? That's just the nature of the beast. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Blas. Senator Tina Rose Mooney Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, maybe just a point of clarification here based on the numbers that were provided for us during the week-long or 2-week-long presentation that we had. I'm looking at the total appropriations here for operations at $50,167,302, and then of course there's the breakdown category by category. When a presentation was done here last week, or the week and a half ago, with the folks from BBMR and Department of Administration being here, we had a breakdown FY 2007 General Fund Appropriation and Allotment Analysis, and for each agency in each category there was a breakdown and a confirmation on what was received, what was the total appropriations and what was received to date, and the percentage of the allotments, and it was confirmed, Mr. Chair, by yourself with the affirmation or the difference between the administration. And just for clarification, so I know what's going on the operations, we're looking at $18,425,480 and having that decrease to $17,964,843. Am I right? Right? That's the deduction, Sean. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
That's what I have. Yes, that's what I understand, Senator.
Okay. But on the presentation that was done here last week, Mr. Chair, BBMR had affirmed or attested to what you had asked, and it showed that a total appropriations for the public health was at $8,089,743, and that there was a 77% release because the year-to-date allotments that was given to the department was $6,220,088. So I just want to know, what are we working on? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a $10 million short here somewhere.
Are you asking a question?
I'm asking Mr. Chair a question just based on the presentation.
You don't ask the chairman a question.
Oh,
Would you
okay.
like to forward a question to a member of the administration? I'm not here to
Okay.
answer questions from a senator. But
John, then I will direct this question to you just based on the appropriations.
Would you like me to request a presence of a representative from the administration of BBMR?
You know what? If Mr. De La Rosa is here
Oh,
and
okay.
he'd like to answer that, I just want to know what we're working with, because when the administration was here last week, and unless my mind escapes me, they showed a 70-cent release on allotments to date on a total appropriation. I just trying to understand this.
I'm sorry.
And I had asked about the breakdown.
I apologize, Senator. I don't know the 8 million reference. I do know that what we are presenting is based on Public Law 28149 or 28150. What is reflected as the operations budget for public health, which is in fact the 18 million sum. Or
So based on the presentation last week on the 8 million,
I will get clarification for
089?
that. No, based on the 18.
Well, I know.
I'm going to take a minute recess because if you're asking me a question, I don't have a sheet in front of me. Are you talking about the oversight where we had allotments? Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. But I'll take a minute recess so we can take a look at it and get.
Million on the 18,425,480.
How much is general fund only? How much is match?
Yeah.
Okay, I can get that provided for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you very much, Senator Mooney Barnes. Senator.
That can't be, Mr. Chair, because the language in the bill is the appropriation is $17,964,000 is appropriated from the general fund. So the entire amount is coming out of the general fund.
No, the 8 million, I'm sorry, Senator, the 8 million that was discussed was for those programs that are only 100% funded from the general fund. It didn't include those that were match for federal programs or anything.
So if we were to ask you then, what is the total general fund released to the Department of Public Health, what would that number be?
I'll get that information right now.
Actually, after Senator Tina Mooney, that's a follow-up. We have Senator Shimizu after Senator Mooney Barnes. So, Senator Tina Mooney Barnes, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Senator Shimizu.
I can yield to Senator Ben if he's going to follow up along that line. So, question, mine is a little bit different.
Okay.
Ben? Okay.
Okay, Senator Shimizu, please continue.
Thank you, Art. Folks, thank you for coming in. Just to show that our good chair is doing due diligence and we're moving on this budget on a Saturday, and we all are sacrificing our Saturdays. I'm a family man. I like to be with my family. I'm sure you do. So for that sacrifice, for all of us, really appreciate it. I'm back again in the legislature, so you're going to have to indulge me with maybe some background information because I'm not familiar. Art, for the record, you're the Director of Public Health and Social Services? So you're the, okay.
The Acting Director of Public Health and Social Services.
And how long have the vacancy of the Department of Public Health and Social Services as a director been vacant?
The vacancy occurred in April 05.
April of 5. And how many acting directors have been there since that time?
Actually, there have been 2.
And so since 05, 2 years later, correct me, what is the, I don't know if the right word, statute of limitation upon which acting can be held?
I don't want to be quoted on that, but...
no, but is or is the acting can be for perpetuity and to remove? Is there a timeline by statute?
There is a timeline, but...
And what is it? I beg my indulgence because there may have been changes since...
I was reappointed as the acting director in December, on December 1st.
Oh, you were the director before?
That is
acting
correct.
Director before?
That is correct.
And when was that?
I started in April of 5, and then I was reappointed in December...
April of 5 to when? To November if you've been reappointed.
I think it was... Gosh, I haven't thought about this. September 06, and I believe... But there is a statute, and I...
And what is this? I would assume that when you were appointed, they would advise you that your appointment as acting is for begins and ends. Is there an ending date now for you in this?
Oh, yes. Actually, as you know, Senator, I serve at the pleasure of the governors, and even though I am an acting appointee, so there is a period where I may be replaced at any moment.
No. I'm asking by statute, not by the will of the governor. I mean, if I remember correctly, the governor can extend his will within the parameters that has been established by law. So, when does that?
Senator,
maybe you can give me that later on. But
yeah,
there is a statute.
I believe it's 12 months.
Okay, so are you within that 12 month or?
Yes, I was appointed December 06.
December 06 to
December 1st.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier the vacancies that you had. Was the director's position included in those 54 vacancies?
In the staffing pattern, no. Actually, I'm sitting in that as the acting director.
But it's a vacant. It's a vacant. I mean, it occurs vacancy because there's lapses involved in it. Because there's 2 positions. Your position now currently as a classified employee is what? Administrative senior citizen, right?
That is correct. And
then now you move over to the acting into a vacancy. So that's not included in that 54. No. So then we'll add, for the record, add one more, 55 vacancy. Okay. And you mentioned earlier that 8 nurses. Are they RNs or LPNs, 1 or 2?
I would have to go through the list, sir.
Okay, just very quickly, is it impacting the southern community center in the south? Because this appropriation is a lump sum for the community health centers. Right. Are any of those 8 within the southern community center, the northern community center, or the central? How is that 8 distributed?
Okay, I would have to go through the stuff.
Okay, thanks. So, Mr. Chairman, if we may just to look at how that's distributed across, because really the community health centers are frontline, especially down south. It's very, very important when our people get sick, our children get sick, and we want to get to them real quick. And I wanted to see how has that impact at the community level in terms of the nursing. Now, in addition to the nurses, are there any other allied health positions? Because I don't want it to be looked at as only nurses and doctors, and we don't have, for example, lab technicians or radiologists or pharmacists and so forth. I don't want to. I want to. I got the impression they were saying that all of the rest is all administrative type, but it's not. They're not administrative type. Give me a breakdown of the 44. Are they lab technicians? Are they program coordinators?
We have a list, Senator, and it has their position title.
Okay, maybe you can provide us a copy.
Yes,
but,
absolutely. We'd like to clean
but
it
they're
up.
also allied health. They're not
Yes.
just administrative.
No. Oh, yes, of course. We have
Except
a
for
medical
the
lab.
private secretary.
Well, that was the one that we were going to use to offset the 460 reduction, Senator.
Right.
This list is just a list of vacant funded separate from that.
Right. But like I'm saying, I wanted to look in terms of the not only nurses but also the allied, the pharmacy.
Yes,
and
we have that here as well, sir.
Yeah, and because we're asking the question in terms of impact. So
Right. Okay. List of allied health.
the amount of the reduction that you have, you say you can live with that.
The amount being 466.37, based on the general fund appropriations of 18 being reduced. Yes, we could, based on the appropriation.
You could live with that reduction.
The 466.37.
In other words, that if the budget cuts, the amount that you're going to get of 17.9 million, that you can work with that budget and continue the care at the community level without disruption.
That is correct, Senator.
Okay, so, for the record, you're saying that the 17.9 is something that it will not impact on healthcare at the community level.
Not at the community level.
Okay, anything in terms of your medical supplies?
No, we, based on general fund appropriation, we identified vacant funded positions to be unfunded to meet the 460 reduction.
So if we got if you're going to live within those reductions, you're going to eliminate those vacancies in your budget.
Absolutely.
The governor has given the guidance through the fiscal policy group that they're going to cut 463. Those are, the great majority are personnel, including those 8 nurses and that 1 doctor that will cease to exist.
Don't know, Senator. The 8 nurses and the 1 physician is a separate list. The list that we've generated to meet the 460 is a list of positions that include, for example, an admin aide.
No, but what do you mean by that? There's another list. I thought there's only 1 budget.
Well, because we anticipate.
Is that going to be paid out of federal funds? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we have a list of identified positions generating 460.
Okay, and those 8 is not included.
That's right. They're not included. That's a separate list.
Can you provide us a copy of those positions? Now we can just take a 1 minute and see where you're cutting. You're cutting.
Sure. You're next, Ben. Okay. We'll get Senator Shimizu. He's working on this, and we'll make copies for the body.
Yeah, thank you. You know, Mr. Chairman, in fact, that's probably going to be a general statement on my part that, you know, I see already that all of the directors are going to follow what the policy of the governor in terms of cuts. What for my informational purposes is I just want to be able to know where they made the cuts. You made the cuts. You followed policy. You make those things so that then when it comes here, I would like to look at it and I say, well, maybe at some point in time, you know, I may want to question how that impacts on services. Yes, you've been in the front line. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you can get us that information, that will be fine.
Okay. The director has requested that there's some errors here, and he's going to.
On flash drive.
Can we get this thing done in the next few minutes?
If you allow me PCI that on flash drive, I just get it in the car, load it up, and we can clean it.
Okay, but why don't we have, if you could. I'm going to
Mr. Chairman, I'm not even going to move. All I'm saying is that you've accepted cutting yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
I just want to know, where did you cut? What part of the anatomy of public health and social services that you made the decision to cut?
It was a management decision driven, a very strong management decision, because we had all the division heads in the room with the deputy present, and we went through the positions, identified our services, what is currently vacant, and identified those positions that they...
I'm not the process, I'm just saying that after it went through all of that process, the end product, and you have it here and you wanted to correct it, that's all I'm saying.
Yes, I just wanted to make a change.
But like I said, you accept the cuts already.
The 460,
that's
yes.
given to you. Show us where those cuts are at, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll ensure, Senator, that you get that list before the next few minutes, okay? Any other questions on Senator Shimizu? Okay, thank you. Senator Gutherts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, welcome. I just have a couple questions I need clarified from your agency. Now, according to the latest general fund appropriation allotment analysis that I have, it shows that Department of Public Health and Social Services had a total appropriation of $8,089,743, and in terms of year to date, and this is as of March 13th from the AS400 system, it says that you've received $6,220,088, which is approximately 77% of your total appropriation. Is that accurate?
Senator, the $8 million reflects those programs that are 100% general fund funded,
Okay.
not including match and all the other programs.
Okay, so the difference between this number and what's in the original appropriation of, let me see, of $18,425,480 is the federal money? Because there's a difference between...
The difference is what in general fund money matches federal programs or augments other programs.
So that's how it came up to $18 million?
Correct.
Okay, now, have you in fact received 77% of your appropriation already? That's what it says in the AS400 report.
It would be, Senator, I would have to agree that if that is what the AS400 reads, only I'm so sorry, my ASO was not feeling well today.
Okay. My point is this. If you've already received 77% of your local appropriation, and we're still about 6 months away for the end of the fiscal year,
23% left.
and if you are to receive a cut now of $466,000, how do you expect to get through the fiscal year?
With regards to the cut, it's just from the GF operations and personnel. The rest of the funding is coming either through matched accounts or through federal accounts or special funds.
So you're saying the federal funds will carry you through till the end of the year?
A good portion of the listing that we're going to provide you, the vacancies, after I'm able to clean that up and give you a nice little spreadsheet, a lot of those positions are federally funded, but they're vacant and they're federally funded.
Okay.
And we do have some GF. I know you want some GF. You want the GF side, and we've got that. We just got to clean it up.
Okay.
And we'll get that to you today.
But will you run into any problems with the federal government if you don't fill those positions? Because a lot of your federal grant money requires you to do certain things. Will you still be able to undertake those duties and responsibilities under the federal grants that you receive if you don't fill those federally funded positions?
Well, Senator, one of the challenges we currently have is the recruitment process. That in and of itself is a challenge. So some of our programs are constantly being challenged with that issue. I'll give you a case in point. We sent one it took 9 months for a position within, it just so happens to be where I'm from, the Division of Senior Citizens. They so very promptly sent it out in October. 9 months later, they were able to hire someone, a program coordinator.
So this is a program coordinator position. What is required for a position like that in terms of education?
Well, experience, I think it was a 3, so maybe like 3 or 5 years of experience with a bachelor's degree or combination. I'm going off the top. I haven't looked at the PC requirement in a while, but that's an example. Senator.
Okay. Just for, I'm sure you may know this, but just for your guidance,
sure.
I think if public health, if you in fact had all those vacancies and they require individuals with degrees and educational backgrounds in various specialized areas, you should provide that list to the University of Guam, to Guam Community College. University graduates, tons of people with the proper degrees that I think would be eligible for positions like that. Program coordinator, that's a managerial supervisory position, requires training and planning and organizational design and so forth and so on. They have those students there. They have those graduates coming out of the university. Even some of the technical areas, the health administration area now is a popular area within the university. So I know in my years there, I had never received any communication from public health or any entity of the government in the health area saying, look, these are the positions we need to fill. Do you have any potentially interested students who are going to graduate or graduates who might be interested? Share that. Let them know, because you will be able to pick up qualified young people who are seeking careers in those areas who could be very helpful to you. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, so I understand now how this difference is between the local appropriation, the federal match, and all this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Guthers. I'm going to just take a 1-minute recess. 1-minute recess.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to be recognized out of order, just to bring some order in terms of what we're doing. But really, this is more or less a point of order. First of all, if you look at the budget that was passed on the 28th Guam Legislature, or the last budget that we did, it is really not conform with what we are now deliberating. Like, for example, Chapter 2. Okay, if you look at Chapter 2, where we're on the old bill or the public law, on this one that we're deliberating is Chapter 4. Okay, the standing rules requires that any change in an existing statute you have to type out everything, because in essence, what's happening here, Mr. Chairman, if we just adopt this, in essence, we are deleting all the other subsection of this bill. Of the public law. Okay? I just want to bring that up. It has to conform with what we passed earlier for the October and September. Right. So I just wanted to make sure that we follow that, at least to conform. The other concern that I have is this. I like to direct a question to, Mr. De La Rosa, Mr. John. Okay, this bill that we're deliberating now, how urgent is it that we have to, let's say, pass this bill by April 1st?
The April 1st date was really based on dealing with 6 months remaining in the year.
Okay.
Until it until the it's not going to
Okay, so
affect
if we don't pass
operations
it
by
on
tomorrow.
April 1st,
It's not
there
going to
won't
affect
be-
operations
there
if it's not passed. by
So
tomorrow.
anyway, what you're telling us then is that the governor do have, the executive power, the administrative power to go ahead and do whatever adjustment that needs to be done.
Correct.
What we're doing right now and deliberating are, the adjustment of the appropriation bill, before the year end, fiscal year, right? That's exactly
Yes, sir.
because we're not appropriating any money at all. Right.
Yes.
So really, the urgency of it is more to, get the budget back, the budget bill that we have or what we pass, to conform with, the austerity time that we're in.
Yes, for the most part, yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I just want to make that perfectly clear. And now, Mr. Chairman, a lot of questions are being asked in terms of the same thing over and over again. What, if can we request that all agencies that are coming in from now on, that they tell us exactly how much allotment release and the cash received, so that we know what is owed to that agency?
John, again, Mr. De La Rosa.
Yes, sir. We'll provide a report.
Okay,
for
I
every
know
agency
that
as they come in.
vacancies involved.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senior Senator Pinko, and that we will recess until Monday morning at 10 o'clock.